Hi, it's Casey, and it's time for Casey at Night. I'm so glad to have you here. Just allow me to finish getting myself set up. I keep telling you guys it's a one-woman production here, and I got to take care of all my own setup, my lights, my camera angles. I got to do it all myself. However, it is an absolute pleasure to be here with you tonight for another episode of Casey at Night. Ah, yes, for those of you who love a good bedtime story, well, for those of you who love a naughty bedtime story, I'm here every week on Wednesday at 10 o'clock sharing a little bit of the naughtiness that a lot of my Twitter friends have been writing about. And we've been doing this now, since February. And I am having an absolute blast. Absolutely, totally loving it. I love reading my friends. I love introducing you guys to new stories. And last week we had a Harem Boys saga. Lovely. Oh my gosh, I love that story. I absolutely love that story. And the video is still up. It'll be up on my pinned tweet until I'm done with tonight's show, and then we switch over to tonight's show, and then I'll be uploading it to my website. So if you don't get a chance to watch a Harem Boys saga before I switch out, here's where you can find it later: CaseyCarterBooks.com, CaseyCarterBooks.com. And for those of you who are seeing me on Periscope, this is where I'm at on Twitter as well. Okay, so again, I want to thank Bernard Foon for allowing me to read his, autobiographical, I think I might be safe in saying autobiographical story, A Harem Boy Saga. It's last week, the chapter that I read kind of set up a very naughty party where folks were in masks and reading nursery rhymes and partaking in some very naughty, nasty pleasures. And I'll be bringing that back to you again really, really soon. But this week, I wanted to introduce you to someone new. But first, as I mentioned, Bernard's story is going to be posted up on my website, which again is CaseyCarterBooks.com. And you can catch whatever videos you haven't seen yet. They're going to all be posted up on the website. Also, I'm looking for more writers. I'm looking to share more stories. So far, the stories that I've been sharing have been people that I've stumbled upon on Twitter. Their names come across my line, or there have been folks that I've developed relationship with. So if you want to have your story read, have an excerpt from your story read, please send me a direct message. You can even tweet me. And thank you, Lorenzo. You can tweet me, and I would be more than happy to connect with you, and let's talk about reading your story. Which brings me to, I'm going to be taking the show to Instagram. So if you're on Instagram, this is how you can find me. Start following me so that when I bring the show to Instagram over the summer, you can either catch me on Twitter/Periscope, or you can catch me on Instagram. And that is the Casey Carter Experience on Instagram. Okay? I'll be reminding you of that again later. But now, without further ado, my new friend, Luscious Lee, who was kind enough to share with us that on the sexual rainbow, she is an orange. And let me see if I can quickly pull that up for you. Let's try. Let me just bear with me, people. I want to share with you what it means to be orange on the sexual rainbow. And because it's something that I've talked about a little bit with you guys before. in terms of colors. All of my stories have covers that are related specifically to the sexual rainbow. And it gives you an idea as to what the, I guess you can say, what the temperature of the story is. So my stories with black covers are going to be the extreme of the BDSM, of the wild, kinky, fetish oriented spectrum. Luscious Lee shared with us that she's an orange. And so for all of you who are curious as to what that means, orange means you enjoy concocting sexual fantasies with the sex act as a dramatic one-act play in which you are the star. Now, once I read this particular story from Luscious Lee, you're going to get a good feel for that. Foreplay is just as important to you as sexual intercourse. Despite it all, you often don't experience orgasm, but you'll put on a good act. You can be violent during sex. Men tend to pull their partner's hair while women are known for leaving red welts on their partner's back. Now, except for the you never experience orgasm part, tonight's story, I think, is a good reflection of what Luscious Lee has described as being her color on the sexual rainbow. So again, Luscious Lee, as a matter of fact, this is also her first publishing. She's on Amazon. I'm not sure if she's anywhere else right now, but I know she's on Amazon. At the end of the broadcast, I'm going to get you her link. She's already kind of tweeted it on my line, but I want to get it to you after we're done here. So let me give you a little bit of background on my new friend, Luscious Lee. Luscious Lee began her writing career after a benign brain tumor left her legally blind. Unable to continue her career as a contract systems trainer, she suddenly needed to find something else to do to support herself and fill her days. She decided to return to her dream of becoming a published writer after not having written fiction in over 20 years. The primary message she received was to write what you know, and sex sells. As she had just spent a solid 5 years virtually living in hotels, having fun, and adventures from coast to coast, coming up with short, sexually explicit stories taking place in motel rooms was an easy assignment. Urban Life, Urban Love, Tales from Room 222 is the result. While not every story is based on reality, quite a few of them are. While the response to this debut effort has been overwhelmingly positive, Luscious has gotten feedback that elements of fantasy erotica are missing from her work, and she readily agrees. These are stories from real life, featuring real people facing real situations in a rundown motel. So not everyone is rich, powerful, thin, young, or beautiful. Because to her, truth is stranger and hotter than fiction. And the truth is, life in the city is often more gritty than pretty. But there's love here if you know where to look for it. The 13 short stories in this collection are sexually explicit, but there are no mystery tycoons or red rooms. Wonder what she's implying. It's a glimpse into real people's experience of urban life and urban love. But you will reading this collection, you may be turned on, intrigued, amused, or horrified. But you will never be bored or regret the time you spent in room 222. So, having read that, I can tell you from my own personal experience and from conversations with some of my writer friends, a lot of us do put reality into these erotic stories. Do not read too far into it, but a lot of what people write are based on some of their experiences, which, if done right, can make for a very interesting story. And in this case, Luscious Lee was kind enough to share that there is some truth in tonight's story. And, thank you. There's some truth in tonight's story that apparently, well, I'm going to leave it up to her to give you more of the details, because she had tweeted with me that this story is based on a couple of people she knows. So I'm going to leave it up to her to want to maybe divulge more details. But as she said, fiction is sometimes hotter than reality. So here we go. Ready for my close-up. I sighed in anticipation, forcing myself not to call Drew again. Damn, Veronica, I scolded myself. Stop acting so thirsty. After all, the man already agreed to leave work to meet you at this rundown hotel just because your horny ass got bored at a business meeting. Give him a chance to get here. I had no idea what had gotten into me. I'd been sitting there at this weekly staff meeting looking at some boring-ass presentation by the little blonde girl who always talked like she was asking a question. And I just got horny. Really horny. Shit. I was afraid I was going to leave a stain on the leather executive chair. Not for her, of course. I might do a woman one day, but she wouldn't be no bony little white girl. I need someone with something to hold on to. Hips, ass, some tits with some weight to them. The kind that demanded you wear a bra with underwire or risk giving yourself a black eye if you had to unexpectedly make a run for it. Someone like myself. No, I'd never had any desire to screw any of the people I worked with. I just felt like having sex. And Drew was the first one to come to mind. He was the first man I would say I'd had sex with in years. I definitely didn't count my ex. We had finally ended a 10-year disaster after I found out his prematurely ejaculating ass had got some side bitch pregnant. I guess one dissatisfied woman wasn't enough for him, because I know for damn sure his dick skills were lacking. He had a hard time maintaining an erection, so for years all I'd gotten was quick and quiet missionary position in the dark. It had been so long since I'd been properly fucked, I'd forgotten what it was supposed to feel like. Of course, I kept custody of my 2 kids as I sent that cheating son of a bitch back to his ghetto-ass side piece to take care of their little bastard the best way he knew how. My children had never seen me with any man besides their father, and I wanted to keep it that way. So even though I was the one who had been sexually deprived for years, I found myself in the sad situation of being totally cut off from any kind of sexual contact while I worked to get my babies raised and off to college. Thankfully for my sanity, motherhood isn't a life sentence. And when I was finally free to live my life as I saw fit, Drew had been there waiting for me. As a good friend of his cousin Tasha's, I was often invited to their family events. I'd seen Drew often through the years, and I knew he was feeling me. But I'd never once stepped out on the fuckless wonder I'd been wasting my time on, so I'd never taken Drew up on his many obvious invitations to hook up. Until, that is, we found ourselves at Virginia Beach to attend the wedding of one of their many cousins. My youngest child had left home. I definitely was overdue for some mindless and meaningless sexual contact. And I knew from experience that Drew acted like providing that service was his mission in life. So when he came on to me, as he usually did, I jumped at the chance so fast, I think I scared him. After so many years of not being properly fucked, I was afraid I'd forgotten how. I was afraid I had forgotten how it was supposed to be done. I wasn't surprised at how much I enjoyed being with Drew, but I was surprised by what he got me to do. Or rather, where he got me to do it. Neither Drew nor I had come in on the trip expecting to end up together, so we hadn't made any plans for hooking up. After many cocktails and a night spent dancing and flirting and rubbing against one another shamelessly on the dance floor of some nightclub, Drew and I found ourselves alone together in the parking lot of the hotel we were all staying at for the weekend. It was an oceanfront hotel, and beautiful on that summer night. As I made out with Drew like a teenager in the front seat of his convertible, I could hear the waves crash against the surf and feel the salty night air cling to my ever more exposed skin. I could also feel that Drew was as hard as I was wet. There was no way either of us wanted to take that much sexual frustration back to hotel rooms we were both sharing with other people. So we didn't. Without asking me what I thought, Drew simply dropped the top of his convertible and took me right there in the car, which was parked in a packed parking lot under a street light, lit up so anybody passing by couldn't help but see us. And he didn't even seem to do it discreetly. Drew took my pussy like he meant it, like he didn't give a shit who might see us or what they might think about it. It wasn't so much that what Drew did to me that night. After all, when you get right down to it, most fucking is just a dick or whatever going into one opening or another. It was the whole experience that had my panties soaking wet. As Drew opened me up for all the world to see, I could hear the waves from the ocean, feel the breeze on my mostly naked flesh, and the heat from the car all at the same time. Drew's rough hands caressed my body on the outside, and his smooth dick worked on my walls as he began to fill me up on the inside. As I stared up at all the dark hotel windows ringing the parking lot, I kept imagining the perfect strangers who might be standing above us, looking down and seeing what Drew was doing to me. Maybe they would get other people to look too. Maybe they would have binoculars. Or even at that moment, getting a close-up look at my cum face as I arched my back toward the stars. What if someone had a camera and we ended up on YouTube or that homemade porn site? All of the possibilities were what excited me. I had no idea I would respond like that. I'd never even thought about having sex out in the open before. It certainly wasn't something I could ever expect from my ex. I had a hard time just getting him to do me in the shower or on our own master bathroom. But with Drew, I was finally free to explore my sexuality. And I found that the idea of being seen, being caught, became almost as arousing than the thought of sex itself. After that night in the car, my fantasies were often about Drew drilling me in front of a nameless, faceless audience. That had been exactly where my mind had drifted to during the meeting, and how I came to be in a motel room in the middle of the day instead of at work where I belonged. I turned to the door when I finally heard Drew knock and had to grin at the sight of him stepping into the room in his UPS uniform. The image of his thick, hairy, chocolate brown legs sticking out of those ridiculously ugly, shit brown shorts made me even hotter. I flashed on an image of Drew making a delivery to my glass-fronted office and bending me over my desk to fuck the shit out of me while my whole staff tried to act like they couldn't see what was going on. By the time Drew made it to the room, I'd worked myself up thinking about what was about to happen, and we were running out of time. I didn't need any romance or foreplay, but I was happy to see he'd stopped off and gotten us something to drink. A good buzz is never a bad thing. I was so busy getting cups out and filling them up for us that I never looked at the door. I didn't see that Drew had slipped the little bolt latch out so that the door wasn't all the way shut. Drew took the cup from me and downed the contents in one gulp. I was glad to see we were on the same page and tried my best to drain my cup too. I didn't make it though, because he impatiently grabbed it and dropped it on the nightstand before throwing me onto the bed. Since we liked doing the do in semi-public places, we didn't always get naked. But when we did, we had a room. So we each stripped ourselves, although Drew was the one to take my hose off because he liked to peel them down my legs. Taking off our own clothes was just more efficient, although I guess it wasn't very romantic. But we weren't there to make love. I said I wanted to fuck, and that was exactly all I wanted to do. Belatedly, Drew smiled at me and said hi after we were both naked and on the bed. I laughed and said hi back, and then he gave me his tongue. This rendezvous had been my idea, but Drew must have been thinking about it all the way over because he was ready. As soon as he got his tongue in my mouth, his fingers were going into my pussy, not just rubbing my clit, but penetrating me hard and swift and with no discussion at all. Of course, I'd been thinking about it as well, and my pussy got immediately wet for him. This turned him on more, and he increased the pressure so that I got completely turned up. With all the friction, Drew had me on my back, legs up in the air, his dick inside me within minutes of his entering the room. I was into it, so I don't know what made me look over Drew's shoulder at the door. Maybe I saw a movement. I'm not sure, but I did look, and I froze. I took a beat to be sure because for once I hadn't even been thinking about us being seen. We were in a motel room with the door shut. Who the hell was going to see what we were doing? But I knew what I'd seen. There was definitely someone peeping at us through the crack in the door. I honestly hadn't understood at first, and I tapped Drew on the chest as he hovered over my torso, still pounding my pussy like he might strike all if he drilled deep enough. I think we got company, I whispered to him. Oh, yeah? Drew said, not even bothering to look or break his rhythm. Then we better give them a good show. So then I knew we weren't the victim of some random peeping Tom taking advantage of the fact that Drew had failed to secure the door. Drew had done that on purpose. He already knew somebody was there, and the person at the crack had known Drew would be in my pussy up to his balls before they even peeped in. I was the only one who hadn't known what was up. Any normal person would have jumped up out of the bed and maybe slapped the shit out of Drew. Hell, a few years or even months ago, I'm pretty sure that had been my first reaction. Drew inviting people to come watch him fuck me without even telling me about it was all kinds of dangerous and disrespectful. And a bunch of other things I couldn't even think of. Because even though I knew it was wrong, a big part of me was excited about my unexpected audience. So I didn't ask Drew the obvious questions after he oh so casually let me know we had a peeper. Like, who the fuck were they? Was it a man or a woman or both? What had he told them about me? And did they think they could join in? Instead, I wondered how I looked from the door. Was I hot? For that matter, could they even see me over Drew leaning all into my shit? Or was the view mostly of the scratches I had already put on Drew's broad back and the muscles contracting in his tightly toned ass as he continued to tear my pussy up? Not that I wanted him to stop. The dick was good. I just wanted my fair share of the spotlight. Just the idea of some strange man at the door taking his dick in his hand as he fantasized about sliding into me up to his ball sack while another man was doing just that made me wild. And the idea that it might be some female looking in envy, trying to see what a bad bitch like me had to do to make a man who was swimming in pussy drop everything in the middle of the day just to come give her some dick made me want to drain Drew dry. It didn't really matter to me who Drew had been talking to. I just wanted him to be able to proclaim that Miss Veronica had that comeback pussy, and his dick would always twitch anytime I made my pussy lips clap in his direction. I guess I'd been turned out. Or maybe I turned Drew out. Did we just bring out the worst in each other? I guess it depended on how you looked at it. And apparently, we will let you look if you want to. Much as I was enjoying the damage Drew was doing to my cunt, I was ready for a change in position. I quickly brought my leg up, throwing it over his waist and causing him to tip over. Then I quickly scooted out from under him to straddle him on the bed. Except that put my back to the door, which wasn't what I was going for. So I did a quick pivot on Drew's torso, presenting him with my ass so he could hit it from the back. I heard him give a little grunt that told me he knew exactly what I was doing. But he went along with it. Instead of getting back up and hitting it doggy style, he positioned me over his dick so I could ride him facing backwards. He had me bend on my knees and swept my legs behind me, holding my ankles while I furiously rocked on his upturned pelvis. The ride was hot, but I was still aware of my audience. Everything on screen needs to be larger than life if you want to keep your fans. So I hyped things up a bit. I moaned Drew's name louder, exaggerating my screw face, and gyrated on his dick so hard it was a wonder I didn't rip it off. "Be easy, Strokeahontas," I heard Drew mutter, calling out the name from one of his many pornos. "I'm the one fucking you. Remember?" I felt him give me a rough shove in the back as he drew his legs up so he could kneel behind me. I assumed the position, and so did he. But just as I was anticipating the feel of his head re-entering my canals, he slapped me hard on my ass. Almost before I fully registered the sting, I felt him reach out and grab a fistful of my shoulder-length locks. Then he pulled as he pumped, causing me to arch my back, and the sounds that came out of my mouth that time didn't need any exaggeration. The jolt I felt as he crashed into my opening, along with the sharp pull on my scalp and the tingling sting on my ass, had all combined to produce a complicated, hot wax on the small of your back kind of pain that was exhilarating. My whole body was on fire, highly sensitized, while it waited for what Drew had in mind next. "Yeah, that's what I'm talking about," I heard Drew proclaim over the sharp sound of his body slapping against the back of my thighs. He kept holding on my hair as he pumped into me from behind, using his grip to control my head like he was riding a bucking bronco. "When I take my time to tear this pussy up, there ain't no need for pretend reactions. I don't care where we are or who might be looking in. When you got my dick running up in you, then my dick is the only dick you need to be thinking about." I fully recognized that Drew was playing to the audience too, but he was still lucky I liked the way he was blowing my back out. When I stiffened for a minute and eased my head back to lessen the pull on my hair, he loosened his grip on my locks, but continued to slam his way into my pussy. Satisfied that he had no real intentions to hurt me, I played along. "Yes, Daddy," I moaned loudly. "I'm sorry, Big Pimpin'. You know your dick is all the dick I can handle." Drew's grip on my hair tightened again, and he slowly pulled my head back. My eyes got bigger, and his stroke got longer. And I lightweight forgot I was making up lines to go along with my own private porno script and started babbling for real. God, do that shit. Take that pussy." "Whose pussy is it?" Drew demanded. He lifted me higher, and the slight change of position caused his erection to hit me right in my spot. The sudden sensation ripped through my core, making me lose track of what we were saying. "I said, whose pussy is this?" Drew repeated, slowing his stroke when I still didn't answer right away. "It's yours!" I cried out quickly, scared he might lose his momentum, just when he was consistently hitting me in just the right spot. "This is your pussy, Drew, for real." I assured him passionately, wanting to back up into him even more, but afraid to shift our positions too much. So I settled for cheering him on instead, moaning seductively, loud enough for my voice to carry to the door. "Oh, baby, yes, baby, you right there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You right in the place. Oh, God, Drew, I think I feel your dick in my uterus." "Don't stop. Please don't stop. Just keep fucking me, Drew. Please, it's your pussy, baby. Only you can do me like this." All this dialogue was hyping me up right along with Drew. We had both worked up a glistening sheen of perspiration, and I indulged a stray thought that we'd probably glow if we'd been on camera. But Drew almost immediately brought my mind back to what we were doing when he started dialoguing with me. "Who got that dick, girl?" "Oh, shit, yours. And what's my name?" "Drew, King Drew." and what you want the king to do for you. Oh, fuck. I gasped as he kept the momentum slamming into my pussy without pause. I want you to go deep as you can, Drew. I want you so far up in me that when you blow, I can taste your cum in the back of my throat. Hearing that, Drew did some slick shit that ended up with us perched on the edge of the bed, me on his lap, facing the door. His legs were wide open, and my legs were straddling his, presenting our peeper with a long, lewd, and lascivious look at my wide-open pussy, with Drew's dick still buried within it. That was the money shot, right there. I'm sure of it, but by the time I'd moved beyond playing to the audience, as I'd requested, Drew was grinding his dick into my cunt as hard as he could, while I gripped him up under his ass and pulled him as far as I could into me. We were probably making the world's ugliest cum faces as we both grunted in unison and then exploded into intense, almost violent orgasms at the same time. When it was over, Drew didn't pull out of me, and I didn't even try to close my legs. I'd fought the impulse to look directly, but I'd seen the shadowy figure still watching from the crack in the door. So I exaggerated the heavy heaving of my chest as I fought to catch my breath, and reached both hands up seductively to play with Drew's ears as he began to nuzzle my neck. I could almost feel the gaze aimed my way from the peeper, and I liked the feeling of being on display. Only after our small movements eventually caused Drew's spent dick to fall out of my rapidly swelling pussy did I hear a satisfied grunt come from my nameless, faceless audience, and the door was finally closed. And that was Ready for My Close-Up from room 222 by Luscious Lee. Okay, so, man, I might have got a little dramatic. Sometimes you can kind of envision yourself in the moment. But I want to say thank you and brava to Luscious Lee for a tantalizing urban experience. Again, as I've said many times, one of the things that drew me to Luscious Lee was the concept of her stories. Not everyone may have had that sleazy motel experience. However, quite a few have. And I love the idea of this one particular room seeing all these crazy sexual adventures. And as I believe it says in her bio, there are 13 short stories. So right now, I believe she's running a special on her book. I would suggest you get it while she's running a special, because I would suggest to her that she up the price. So, Luscious Lee, when we're all done, and if you aren't already doing it now, I am asking you to throw out your promo again. I saw it a couple of days ago. I want you all to follow Luscious Lee. I suspect she's going to have a wonderful writing career. And I want you to read some more of her urban life, urban love stories from room 222. And again, I want to thank you all for listening to Luscious Lee and Ready for My Close-Up. Coming up, however, coming up, I have another one of my friends, Dr. Lola Smith. And Dr. Lola's story is called Made to Order. Dr. Lola lives in England. And her story, I have to tell you, when I read it, was like, ooh, there are some elements in her story that I just kind of loved, like Luscious Lee. If I could just back up for a second. So this idea of people watching, the voyeurism, if you remember, well, you might not remember, but several shows back, I talked about fetishes, and voyeurism is a huge, huge fetish. And some of us like to be watched. Some of us like to watch. And ain't nothing wrong with that. And I'm not like talking about, watching porn on TV or computer or whatever. I'm talking about you are the live porn, or you are watching, and whether it's people knowing you're watching and they're standing right there in front of you, or in this case, as in room 22, they're kind of off in as a shadowy figure. It's a very exciting and tantalizing idea. And Dr. Lola, in her story, Made to Measure, also has a little bit of a fetish concept in it, which I'll explain a little bit more when we read the story. But it's one of those things that caught my attention because, as we talked earlier about the sexual rainbow and people's colors, and Luscious Lee said she was an orange. And if you remember, orange talks about, sex being like a little one-act play where you're the star. Her story here kind of demonstrates that, while Dr. Lola's story is a little bit more of a black experience. And black on the sexual rainbow, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of my stories are either black or red. So black on the sexual rainbow says that you're the misfits of the sex world and are often seek out each other in kinship. You probably prefer what some consider perverted sex, usually masochistic or sadistic in nature. You're moody and perform at your sexual peak when you're under stress or unhappy. I can tell you what, not necessarily when I'm unhappy, but when I'm under stress, scary. But enough about me. More about Dr. Lola coming up next week with Made to Measure. And again, I want to say a big shout out to Luscious Lee and her debut book, Room 222, Urban Life, Urban Love. Catch me coming this summer on Instagram at the Casey Carter Experience. You can find all the videos on my website, CaseyCarterBooks.com. Or you can just follow me on Twitter and on Periscope and catch my videos. Now, before I wrap up and say goodnight, I wanted to kind of give a bit of a shout out because, as I mentioned, I'm a one-woman production here, lights, camera, action, but that also includes hair and makeup and wardrobe. So each week you see me in these kimonos, which are Victoria's Secret. So a big shout out to Victoria's Secrets for the beautiful kimonos. And you can't change colors fast enough. So I think I'm all caught up and I'm gonna have to go shopping to see what new colors you have for the summer because I need some new colors. And then as far as makeup, I have become very, very fond of Maybelline's nudes collection. And right now I have 6 different palettes. And so today it's a combination of 2 of the palettes. And I apologize because I can't remember which of the 2 palettes. I want to say one is the blush nudes, and I believe the other one is the rock nudes, with a little bit of color from a Sephora makeup collection that I have. And then the lips. This is a little bit of an experiment here. This is a NYX, I don't know if they refer to it as NYX or NYX black liner with some pink lipstick in the center, kind of to pull you into my mouth. With on top, which is actually a black gloss with some sparkles in it. That's a part of the Ulta collection. So there's a lot going on here, and hopefully one of these days I can get a little assistance with all of this. But in the meantime, I want to give a big shout out to those folks for creating products that are easy enough for an amateur as myself to create the face that you see here on Casey at Night. So until next week, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I want to thank all my authors, Luscious Lee, Bernard Foon from last week's Harem Boys saga, and next week we've got Dr. Lola coming. But in the meantime, thank you for joining me, and I love you like a fat kid loves cake. Bye.